Thanks again to everybody for sticking through with us. We're here, the Tier 2 Early Adopter Incentive Program, finalizing the program webinar. Today will be going over the draft of the Tier 2 Early Adopter Incentive Program Guidebook. This officially kicks off our last kind of public comment phase of the Tier 2 Early Adopter Incentive Program. So we going through the guidebook and letting folks know how they can provide that feedback, kind of what kind of feedback we're looking for, and so forth. My name is Derek Cockle. I'm the Tier 2 Incentive Program Manager here at the Washington State Department of Commerce. We at the Department of Commerce has a wide array of programs which we provide, and anywhere from economic development to community services, crime victims, and public safety. We have a wide stretch of folks that we're able to help here within the state of Washington, and we feel very fortunate to be able to provide that support across the state. Our little section of the Department of Commerce is the Clean Buildings Unit. This is a snapshot of our staff, many of whom are on the call here with us today. Again, want to remind folks, if you have any questions, to drop those in the Q&A, and our wonderful staff will answer those to the best of their abilities. If we are not able to respond to any questions in the moment, we'll be sure to get those posted afterwards in a Q&A document. Yes, we have our incentive program, our data program, our technical assistance program, and then our program, all working together very closely to try and help the state of Washington as we navigate through the Clean Building Performance Standard. Our agenda for today, we'll do a brief overview of the Clean Building Performance Standard, and then a brief overview of the Tier 2 Early Adopter Incentive Program. That's for folks who may not just be familiar with it. I see a lot of familiar names, so we'll try to be brief on those overviews. We'll go through the draft guidebook as it stands, and then we'll get into some questions and comments. Want to be sure to leave questions and comments ample time at the end for any questions that folks may have. Do want to, when we review the draft guidebook, I'm just going to have the PowerPoint slides up. I don't know, Jeff, if you could drop in, if you haven't yet, drop a link to the guidebook, the Box account where it is. Thank you so much. So folks can download that themselves and take a look as we go through it. I'm not going to scroll through at the moment. We're going through it, so just so folks know. Yeah. So moving into Tier 2 and the Clean Buildings Performance Standard, that is based on ASHRAE Standard 100 2018. The law was authorized in House Bill 1257 back in 2019, and it covers energy efficiency in existing buildings. Commerce has developed amendments to the Standard 100 and to conform with clean buildings legislations, and these amendments can be found under WAC 194-50. The Clean Building Performance Standard covers Tier 1 buildings and Tier 2 buildings. Tier 1 buildings are larger buildings over 50,000 square feet, and Tier 2 buildings, which we are here to talk about today, are buildings between 20 and 50,000 square feet, as well as multifamily buildings over 20,000 square feet. Commerce has been charged with rulemaking, notifying building owners of the standard, administering the incentives, which is what we're here today to talk about, supporting mandatory compliance, and then levying fines in the instance of non-compliance with the standard. Basic requirements for Tier 2 compliance are benchmarking, an energy management plan, and operations and maintenance program. Benchmarking can be done. It establishes use for energy use for a building and defines how much energy that building is using. Buildings will need to create an account with Energy Star Portfolio Manager if they do not already have one. And then they, once they have established their weather normalized energy use intensity, they will get that reported. They will define what their energy use intensity target is for a building. And though Tier 2 buildings are not required to meet an energy use intensity target at this time. So you need to do your benchmarking, identify your energy use intensity, weather normalized energy use intensity, find what your energy use intensity target is, then have that for benchmarking compliance. The energy management plan and the operations and maintenance programs, they are somewhat similar. They are both living documents. The energy management plan describes a building's energy performance and typically consists of things such as building energy metering and reporting, energy use intensity reporting, implementation of energy efficiency measures, operations and maintenance considerations for energy managers, and communication responsibilities. The operations and maintenance program, excuse me, is used to ensure energy efficient operation and minimize failure of building systems and components throughout their service lives. This is a component of an energy management plan. It lists inspection and maintenance requirements for specific systems and equipment, and also establishes responsibilities for individuals operating and maintaining the equipment, components, and its systems. Tier 2 responsible parties, we have our building owner, which is an individual or entity possessing title to a building. In the event of a land lease, the building owner is the entity possessing title to the building on the leased land. We also have the qualified energy manager, and this is an individual designated by the building owner who has 2 years of experience, including educational or professional experience with commercial building operations and or building energy management, in addition to successful completion of Clean Buildings Tier 2 training program as specified by the authority having jurisdiction, which is the Department of Commerce. Or the qualified energy manager can meet the definition of a qualified person. We established a different kind of role for this qualified energy manager to ensure that building owners could, with the given the experience, background, and the completion of the Clean Buildings Tier 2 training program, that a building owner or somebody who has the experience but may not necessarily meet the definition of a qualified person, they can fulfill that role of the qualified energy manager. Moving into building notification, we are currently in the process of identifying Tier 2 buildings within the state of Washington, and we are also in the process of getting those into the Clean Buildings portal, and then we are working through the process of how to get building owners connected with the buildings within the portal. We are looking to notify building owners in 2025. We don't have a specific date at the moment since we are still in the building identification process, but it will happen in 2025. And the Tier 2 incentive applications will be able to be submitted July 1st of 2025 when the Tier 2 compliance opens for Tier 2 buildings in the state of Washington. Moving into the early adopter incentive program. The program incentivizes completion of Tier 2 reporting requirements. Incentive applications will be accepted July 1st, 2025 through June 1st of 2030. The incentive funds have been capped at $150 million which will be paid out by participating utilities to the building owners. The base incentive rate was established in legislation at 30 cents per gross square foot. The Department of Commerce was allowed to do an enhanced incentive, and we have currently set that rate at 75 cents per gross square foot. Eligibility. Buildings eligible to receive the Tier 2 incentive are you have to fit the square footage, buildings between 20,000 to 50,000 square feet of gross floor area, and multifamily residential buildings with greater than 20,000 square feet of gross floor area, excluding the parking garage area. The building must demonstrate compliance with the benchmarking, energy management, and operations and maintenance program requirements of the Clean Buildings Performance Standard, and the building must be served by at least one participating utility. Participating utilities must be, excuse me, participating utilities must serve more than 25,000 customers, or utilities who serve over 25,000 customers are required to participate in the program, and utilities who serve under 25,000 can opt in to participate in the program. In looking at enhanced incentive funding eligibility, we're looking at vulnerable populations and rural communities, as well as tribal sovereign nations and overburdened communities. We are looking at supporting multifamily affordable housing, multifamily building owners with a who commit to anti-displacement measures, as well as small business building owners who commit to anti-displacement measures. And then we're looking at high energy users that would be defined as having an energy use intensity with their weather normalized energy use intensity is 15 over their energy use intensity target. So that is a brief summation quickly of the Tier 2 compliance and the Tier 2 early adopter incentive program. Wanted to get into the guidebook and just go over our guidebook real quick. I don't know, Jeff, are there any questions at the moment which could be addressed, or should we just keep moving on?
Yeah, we do have a couple questions, Derek, and maybe I'll hit a couple, but before I do, if I can just offer a reminder for folks, it really helps us if you can put those questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. We've got a great team behind the scenes that's answering those questions for us as we go, and it's helpful if we can have it in the Q&A, and it makes it a little simpler. So, but one that's pertinent to, I believe, the information you just went over is asking if is the incentive base plus enhance, so 30 cents plus 75 cents, or is it just 75 cents?
It would just be 75 cents. So if you qualify, and we'll go through a little bit more what those the eligibility and kind of the qualifications for those enhanced eligibility. We'll go through that a little bit more in detail, but essentially if you meet those qualifications, one of those qualifications, then you would you would be eligible to receive the enhanced incentive of 75 cents per square foot. If you don't, then you would be able to receive that base incentive of 30 cents a square foot.
Right. And then ask a clarifying question, and then I think we could probably move on because our team is getting to the questions here. Tier 2 buildings do not have an EUIT yet, correct?
They do not have to meet their energy use intensity target. They have to identify what that is, but they do not have to meet it at this point. So part of the benchmarking reporting will be, finding out what your weather normalized energy use intensity is, and then identifying what your target is. But again, there's no performance metric. Um, Tier 2 buildings do not have to meet the EUIT that they report.
Thanks, Derek. And we'll continue to capture the questions in the Q&A as they come in and uh, see if we can hold some until the end with the Q&A session.
Great. So moving into the draft guidebook as it is. Jeff had dropped a link in the chat earlier. Folks wanted to take a look at that. I'm not going to scroll through the document as not to cause vertigo for anybody. So it simply starts out with a glossary of definitions that are in the guidebook. We are looking for if there are to ensure that we have all the definitions in there. If anybody sees any definitions they feel could be further defined or that are not clear throughout meeting the guidebook, please let us know what we can put in there. The glossary as it stands, we define, building owner, define covered buildings. We talk about the Energy Star Portfolio Manager ID, define gross floor area, things like that. Qualified energy manager, qualified person, tier 1, tier 2. Following the glossary, we get into the program basis and the overview. This gives us just kind of the historical context of the program, provides that background, talks about the Clean Buildings Act, go over a little bit more terms and documentation, outline the notification timelines and eligibility for buildings. We talk briefly about properties regulated by tribal sovereign nations. Then we go over an overview of base incentive terms and enhanced incentive terms, again, as we briefly described earlier. And then we go into provide an overview of the enhanced incentive eligibility. To go into a little bit more detail, we talk about rural buildings. Sorry, I'm scrolling through, so give me just one moment. Talking about rural communities as far as eligibility, these are eligible applicants for rural communities are Washington state cities and towns with populations under 50,000 or counties under 200,000 who are not participating in CDBG entitlement, the Urban County Consortium. There's the 2022 local governments served by Washington State CDBG program lists those cities and counties out specifically. Part of the rural communities and building owners, we've also included that building owners who rent or lease their space but do not occupy the eligible building, which is located in that rural community, must commit to anti-displacement provisions in order to receive the enhanced incentive. We have followed that along with the overburdened communities and vulnerable populations eligibility and criteria. The Office of Financial Management has a map, the overburdened communities of Washington State map. and you can type in your address. And if your building is within one of these uh, is identified on the map in the highlighted area, you would be eligible for the enhanced incentive. Again, building owners who rent or lease but do not occupy an eligible building must commit to anti-displacement provisions to receive the enhanced incentive. We also look at multifamily affordable housing for the enhanced for receiving the enhancement. Generally, that is low income housing tax credit properties, multifamily and public housing locations, which a tenant pays approximately 30% of their adjusted income on rent and utilities. Homeless coordinated entry system points of contacts, and USDA rural housing, which can be identified on the Housing and Urban Development Resource Locator map. We're also looking at building owners committed to anti-displacement. So whether that be multifamily or small business location, if you are not located, in a rural area or within an overburdened community or vulnerable population in a highlighted area on those maps, on that map, if you will commit to anti-displacement measures, you would be eligible for the enhanced incentive. And then we are also looking at high energy users. That is defined as being 15 over the energy use intensity target. And again, folks don't have to meet that target, but once you confirm that your weather normalized energy use intensity is 15 above your energy use intensity target, that would qualify you to receive the enhancement as well. Let's see. And the for the enhancement, we have set aside 100 million of the 150 million to ensure that folks who qualify for the enhancement can receive that. This amount will run through 2027, through June 30th of 2027, whereas if there are any funds remaining in this enhanced incentive portion of the pot, those will be returned to the remaining, whatever is remaining for the tier two incentive program. The amount would stay the same as far as, the 75 cents per square foot. If a building was eligible for that, that would still stay the same. But as far as having a reservation of funds, that would go back into the general pot of funds. The guidebook then goes into the submitting application portion of it. There will be changes to this section as we continue to develop the portal and include tier two buildings, implement tier two buildings into the portal. So there will be, some changes to this over time. Right now, what is in there is kind of the general idea, the general framework of what we are anticipating things will look like. So it may change over time, but this should be kind of a general direction as far as where things are going. There's a section about pre-application preparation that goes over, things that folks can do, like downloading the standard, creating an Energy Star Portfolio Manager ID, then gathering information about the building. We then move into kind of submitting the application, what that may look like. It provides guidance as far as setting up a secure access Washington account, which will be needed in order to access the portal. Since Tier 2 buildings aren't in the portal as of yet, they cannot access the portal at this moment. So there's some connections between Secure Access Washington and Energy Star Portfolio Manager and the Clean Buildings portal. The Tier 2 building owners will need to have received their notification in order to make those connections. That just kind of provides an overview of what will be needed in order to start with submitting compliance documentation and the application for the early adopter incentive. We are still trying to figure out how to do the application within the portal itself. We're trying to make this process as simple as possible. A lot of the portal has been, to date, it has been focused on Tier 1 buildings. And since the requirements for compliance are different for Tier 2 buildings, so will be the needs as far as submitting compliance documentation and applying for the Tier 2 incentives. So we're still building that out, and we're trying to make that as simple as we can. So trying to implement functions, within the portal itself where we can, and then, where we can't, trying to make that simple for building owners, for qualified energy managers as possible. We talk a little bit about buildings or parcels with multiple owners, trying to give a little bit of guidance in those instances. Then we go into what the application review process looks like. We talk about incentive calculations, how the utilities and the Department of Revenue are included. Then we talk about the incentive payment and the closeout of the early adopter incentive application. Moving on. We already went over that one. Apologize. Got a little ahead of myself. We can come back to that if anybody has any further questions. We have Exhibit A, which does go into more definition on the enhanced incentive criteria and verification. And then we have Exhibit B in the guidebook, which is the early adopter incentive anti-displacement agreement. Really looking for feedback on that. Any advice, any guidance, any thoughts that folks have on the anti-displacement agreement is very welcome. This is kind of what we put forth, what we thought may work for folks. I think moving forward, we'll need feedback, from folks. We want general thoughts and considerations, any needed clarifications. If folks have, thank you, Jeff, if folks have, specific feedback, as far as like editing the document, if anybody is so inclined, they are welcome to do that. You can download the document from the Box account, and if you would like to provide anonymous feedback, you can do so. There's a comment form, which we have. It's very, very brief, just kind of like organization type and location, and then a space for your comments. You can also send emails if you prefer, or if you want to engage in more of a conversation, also welcome. You can send those to the Clean Buildings Incentive Program at commerce.wa.gov. Or you can also send those directly to me as the Tier 2 Early Adopter Incentive Program Manager, Derek.Cockle at commerce.wa.gov. But we really do. We are encourage feedback. We appreciate the expertise that other folks can offer us as we build out this program. We'll be in this kind of public comment phase until January 31st. At that point, we will have all the comments and the feedback. We'll have that implemented. We'll do kind of an internal review here with the commerce team, the clean buildings team. I'm sure we'll have a review from the AAG, and then sometime before, hopefully well before July 1st, we'll be able to put out the finalized version of the guidebook and kind of essentially kick off the Tier 2 program. And I'm sure we'll have another webinar around that time as well, just to formalize that a little bit more. So with that, we can get into questions and comments. If folks want to come off of mute or put their questions in the Q&A. And Jeff, if you want to work your magic and ask any of those questions, that would be now would be the time.
Now would be the time to do that. You got it. All right. So thank you again to everyone that's posting their questions in the Q&A. Our buildings team is answering them as quickly as they can. So thank you, team, for doing that. There's one that is in regards to the as the high energy user piece of the enhanced incentive. Following up for clarity, asking for clarifying that a building would get a higher incentive because they have a high EUI, so they're 15 EUI over the target, whereas a building that does not meet that high EUI requirement would just get the standard incentive. So, correct?
Yeah, and we've had some conversations, here, along those kind of the same, in that same vein, but it would be a building which has, where their weather normalized EUI is 15 over the target, they would qualify for the enhanced incentive. I think that may seem backwards to a certain extent, but I think it's kind of it's recognizing that, these buildings are going to need to do some implementation of energy efficiency measures at some point in order to reduce that energy use. Energy use is really a reduction in energy use is really what we are going for. And I think that there is, something to be said about, providing support for building owners who do need to make these, who will need to implement these energy efficiency measures, at some point in the near future. I think that's kind of the intent behind it. But if folks have, strong feelings or thoughts one way or another, we would be welcome to hear that, welcome to consider that as we move towards finalizing the program.
Excellent. So, Chris, if there's a follow-up on that question, please let us know. And I'll move to the next one here. Asking for incentive calculations, do we provide the listed cost of compliance based on our cost estimates in the energy management plan? And there's an additional question here, so I'll let you get to that one first, Eric.
Yeah, we would be looking at identifying the cost of compliance for for the energy management plan, the energy management plan, operations and maintenance program. I think we had sent out a survey a few months back, and some of the feedback that we got was really trying to find balance with any enhanced incentive payment, and ensure that it did not overcompensate or pay over what the cost of compliance was for a building who received the enhanced incentive. Um, so we're, trying to find ways that we can address that, and, having folks list, what their cost of compliance was, what their, estimated cost of compliance was. That's where we are at right now. There haven't been any conversations, about requiring receipts at the moment or something like that. But that is we're still kind of in the development phase of trying to figure out how to implement that. But it would be, yeah, identifying the estimated or actual cost of compliance.
Okay. So the additional question, you may have uh, touched on that in your explanation, but I do want to just ask it just in case there's additional to it. So the additional question along those lines was, what exactly do we mean by listed cost of compliance? In particular, in this case, for multifamily portfolios. Sounds like in this particular case, the cost of compliance now solely reporting, no targets yet, so compliance costs are low.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to determine, specific costs, and list those out, with the expectation that every building owner would have the same exact costs. I would assume we would keep it more broad, um, as opposed to more specific, once we get to those final determinations, of how we implement that. But, it would be looking at, allowing building owners to define what their cost of compliance is. I think in the instance of, if you are subcontracting out, your energy management plan, your operations and maintenance program, if you subcontract it out, your benchmarking, to me, that would be an easy way to determine the cost of compliance. What were the receipts on those expenses? If you have an internal person who is doing that work, you know, it will get a little bit more difficult. And I don't think that we necessarily want to prescribe at this moment. I don't think we would necessarily want to prescribe how that was done. Um, but we want that intention to be, a fairly accurate reflection of what uh, the cost of compliance was, as close as can be estimated, if it can't be, defined 100% accurately.
Excellent. Thanks, Derek. And and Amanda, if there's a follow-up on that, please let us know. Happy to bring that up again as well. Um, Another question, Derek is asking if there are any incentives for nonprofits, enhanced incentives available for that reason of being a nonprofit. And if there's not, is that something that could be considered?
Yeah, I mean, that is something that can be considered. I think it is difficult when we get into um, kind of specific building use types, and specific, um, like, um, it can be difficult to apply that for a qualifying purpose, or a qualifying eligibility for the purposes of an enhancement of the incentive. But that being said, we appreciate the feedback, and we would appreciate, any thoughts or any considerations that we may not have been able to, that we may not have addressed or thought of. So, I would encourage folks, if they feel, that nonprofits, specifically nonprofit organizations or, any other building use type, if they should be considered for the enhancement, I would encourage them to provide that feedback to us at this time. So we do have that feedback from folks and can consider that when finalizing the program.
And I'll add the feedback form into the chat again for you, Derek, just so that
Thank you.
it's back up top. But in the meantime, I'm going to move to this next question, asking if anti-displacement provisions apply to university dormitories.
It's hard to say specifically. I mean, the anti-displacement agreement would be, not raising rent for compliance with the standard. I don't know that I had specifically thought of college dormitories as a part of that. But I mean, as it is laid out now, I don't think, excuse me, there's anything that would exclude that. But I think we'll have to maybe look a little bit more closely, as far as if that meets the intention of that anti-displacement agreement. Yeah, I would encourage any thoughts or feedback on that coming through, so we can definitely weigh that and consider that when thinking about the anti-displacement agreement.
Thanks, Derek. This is Jeanette. I'm the person who asked the question, and I just agree with you that in reading through that, I don't see a conflict. It's a little different, how we don't have monthly rent, but we can definitely give you a schedule for the year, and we're not going to raise it.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage you to include us.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't, as it is written, I don't, there's nothing that explicitly excludes that. I think it's more the intention, of the anti-displacement agreement, is, just trying to address not raising rent for tenants, whether they be small businesses, whether they be housing tenants as well. But yeah, no, thank you, Jeanette.
All right. Question in the Q&A, Derek, is asking, will the non-exempt space in exempt buildings that's required to comply with Tier 2 be eligible for incentives?
I don't believe so, but I don't know if there's anybody else from the team that may be able to jump in. But I don't believe it would be.
Yeah, the question again in the Q&A is, will the non-exempt space in exempt buildings that's required to comply with Tier 2 be eligible for incentives? We're talking clarification on that one too.
Yeah, we haven't discussed that, but thank you so much for bringing up that situation, and we'll probably have something further established a little later. Thank you so much. Please, Judy, write that down.
All right. So more to come on that. All right. Derek, will the building size list or map be available to the public?
No, I don't believe it is specifically available to the public. I know with the Tier 1, we have the Tier 1 buildings, we have a couple different maps, which kind of show like how many Tier 1 buildings of which size are in a given county. I know we would like to be able to provide some more tools for folks to kind of look at building stock data, but at this point, I'm not sure what that will look like in the future. I know we're always looking to, provide tools, but then, it kind of gets into, there's a lot of privacy concerns when we get into this kind of data. And, as far as like building addresses, building owners, things like that, I think there's a lot of considerations which we need to take into account as far as protecting information and having clear, transparent processes and information. And I think as we move along, we're continuing to try and, really find where that line is and err on the side of protecting private data. So I think that's probably about as, I know it's not very clear, but I think we're trying to share what we can and protect what we must.
All right. So continuing with the Q&A, just got a couple more, I believe, that we haven't touched on, but there was a comment offered going back to the question about dormitories, pointing out that there are some K-12 boarding schools that also utilize dormitories. So we'll certainly take note of that as part of the discussion.
Great.
And then another question of asking, are Tier 2 buildings that are part of a campus or campus level benchmarking configuration, 1390 pathway or otherwise, eligible for the incentive?
We're talking about, we had a conversation just this morning, trying to provide more clarity on that. I think I can't give a specific answer. I can't give a yes or no answer right now as far as if they are eligible for the incentive or not. We are trying to explore how to make that possible. But at this point, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if anybody on the team would like to give a more specific answer. But that's my understanding of where we're at right now.
I think initial thoughts is with district energy decarbonization, it extends the compliance deadline. We cannot extend the deadline for awarding for the incentives. District Energy allows for an extension for up to 15 years. We wouldn't be able to award that in 15 years, if that makes sense, right? So to make it possible, you would have to comply by by the compliance date, or if there's still funds available. But we're still in discussion. If there's something that we haven't thought of, please submit your feedback. Thank you.
Hey, Derek, do you mind if I just follow up on that question since
Yeah,
I
of
asked
course.
it? The only counter argument I would make to that, or just suggestion, is that with Tier 2 not having a performance requirement right now, like the district energy systems will have benchmarked by June 1st, 2026. And if their EMP was implemented prior to the incentive date, I do think there's probably a bunch of campuses that might have Tier 2 buildings that are essentially in the same position as other Tier 2 buildings in terms of compliance, even though their performance date for the entire campus has been pushed out to 2040.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's kind of, and that's the kind of the exact conversation, that we are having. And it's, trying to take these Tier 1 incentives and the Tier 2 incentives, and they, as programs, they apply specifically to Tier 1 and Tier 2 buildings, within this kind of singular building compliance pathway. And so, now we talk about these district energy systems, we talk about campuses, we talk about connected buildings, how are we able to make those connections and apply these programs to these kind of different but similar instances. So yeah, thank you for that feedback. That's what we're wrestling with right now as well.
Perfect.
And
Thank you for the consideration.
I just want to add that not all the districts are going to file decarb plans. So let's make sure we don't mix that up. But even a district that is filing a decarb plan, they could submit an EMP, OMP, and the EUI of their current usage and be working on reducing that. So I really encourage and strongly agree with Scott's comments.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We've got a couple minutes left, I see. Jeff, I don't know if you feel there's any questions that should be addressed right now, or if we should save it for FAQ document afterwards.
I believe, from what I can tell, we've touched on all the questions in the Q&A, and I believe the chat. If we did miss anything, we'll follow up with them. Derek, if you don't mind, there is one that came in early on that was very much compliance focused. And for those that may have more of the compliance focused questions, would you okay if I offered up this customer support ticket and the office hours links into the chat?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
I will definitely do that. So just for the group's knowledge, our customer support tickets for those compliance-related questions, or if you've got a scenario on your path to compliance, we encourage you to fill out the support ticket that's answered by our team here and distributed to those best suited to answer, and whether it be technical assistance or incentive, our data, it gets to our team and usually a relatively quick response. The other option for a resource for you is our monthly office hours, normally held on the fourth Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. For the month of December, we are going a week earlier due to the holidays. So please mark your calendars. I'll put the registration link on that. You just have to register once, and you're signed up for all of them through 2025 and this month. And so it makes it nice and easy, and it's a great way to continue connecting with our buildings team, including our incentives team, such as Derek and Brittany, Sam, and Josette. So I'll put those in the chat for everyone.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, just wanted to remind folks, feedback will be open through January 31st. Then we will finalize that guidebook and applying for the program. We're currently developing resources as well as the EMP template, O&M template, and Qualified Energy Manager training, and then encourage folks to communicate this program far and wide with their networks. If you need to reach out to us, emails, buildings@commerce.wa.gov and the Clean Buildings Incentive Program at commerce.wa.gov, as well as the links that Jeff is sharing in the chat. Thank you, everyone, so much for attending. Again, I encourage you to reach out to us to provide your feedback, provide your knowledge and expertise before we finalize this program. It will stay open until January 31st, receiving public comment. So please do reach out to us and let us know what you're thinking and what may or may not work for you. Thanks again so much, and everybody have a great rest of your day. Enjoy time off if you're going to take it.